What's up, fight fans? We bring you the second installment of UFC fighters knocked out in other promotions.
Just waiting to opportune himself. That big left hand. Oh, and that was a left hook that finished everything. Really lowered.
There's a huge right, and it's over.
Last time we had 8, and today we have 2 more, with several UFC champions who were extinguished before reaching the championship. Before we start with the knockout treatment, make sure you support our work by punching the subscribe button and like button, and we strongly recommend you watch the first part of our video. Coming up first is the legend of MMA sports, Demetrious Johnson. You know him as the UFC flyweight champion who crushed the division with his dominance and 11 title defenses. With 15 years of competition and over 30 bouts, Mighty Mouse went through thick and thin in the UFC, triumphing in most cases with his high fighting IQ and never getting knocked out. His conquest continued even after the transfer to One Championship, where he won the Flyweight Grand Prix tournament in the first 3 bouts. 2 years later, he fought for the title, where he was stopped by reigning champion Adrian Moraes. To the astonishment of the audience, Mighty got dropped by an uppercut and brutally knocked out by Brazilian's knee while being grounded.
Throws a knee on the jaw. DJ's hurt. It's good night, Irene.
Demetrious must have forgotten the dangers of knees, especially after years of competing in the UFC, where they're illegal. With additional punches, he was over and out. Knockout was hard to watch, but Demetrious, being a fighting legend, returned with vengeance. Mighty captured the title, avenged his loss, and beat Adriano twice. Marcus Brimage enjoyed a prosperous career with a 6-1 record until he ran into the up-and-coming Conor McGregor. After the first round KO, his career went down the steepest hill. Out of the last 7 fights, he lost 6 times and was forced to seek his luck in the bare-knuckle promotion. Unfortunately for Marcus, he didn't find it, and only buried himself further into the abyss. His debut ended with a draw, and in the second fight, he faced Trevor, 10 years younger bare-knuckle fighter. It takes courage to enter a bare-knuckle scrap against a former UFC fighter without professional fighting experience, especially in the debut. But Lokman has shown that the circled ring is where he belongs. After the first bell, the fight started explosively, and Marcus found himself on the floor after 10 seconds. As soon as he got up, the exchanges continued, and after a couple of hooks, Trevor's fist landed straight on the head of Brimage and sent him to the canvas again, except that after this blow, he could not recover even while the referee was counting it down. Did you know that steel-built Yoel Romero was knocked out early in his career? You must remember how the Cuban fought many young lions while performing for the UFC. Well, this time he was on the other side of the coin. Young Yoel collided with twice as experienced Rafael Cavalcante in 2011 when he debuted for Strikeforce. Even then, Romero had... When we remember what kind of bombs old Romero ate in the UFC, the question arises, how much power diversion? Well, let us remind you that Rafael had 21 professional bouts, 13 wins and 13 KOs. The man entered the fight to kill or be killed every time. EFC, KSW, and UFC. Dricus du Plessis had a hell of a fighting career, and wherever he performed, he would pick up the promotion's title along the way, sometimes in 2 divisions. The African native was submitting and knocking out his opposition like they were nothing. Even more impressive was that Dricus was rarely defeated, let alone finished. In 23 fights, the man only went to the decision twice and won still. However, we all have a bad day sometimes, even du Plessis. After winning the EFC middleweight championship, Dricus got a welterweight title shot in his KSW debut, which he took advantage of, knocking out champion Roberto Soldic during RoboCop's first title defense. The rematch was immediately scheduled, but this time around, Roberto managed to get du Plessis' number. In the third round of Fight of the Night, RoboCop aimed and shot, going through Dricus with his ruthless punches.
Just waiting to opportune himself. That big left hand. Oh, and that was a... Du Plessis. Well, after such a game out...
Just like Demetrious Johnson, Roberto returned to the rematch to avenge the defeat and regain his championship before becoming the dominant champion of KSW. One Championship really did Sage dirty by matching him up with 13 years older kickboxing machine Cosmo Alexandre. Northcutt's debut went horribly. Using a low hands guard against a man who knocked people out in 3 different striking sports was absurd. Sage was begging to get knocked out. Consequently, the first punch Cosmo threw was brutal and therefore enough.
With people that want to grapple with him. Cosmo!
30 seconds in, Ivan Drago of MMA got his face rearranged in the true sense of the word. Besides getting face-planted with a vicious right hook, Sage suffered a shocking injury. The 23-year-old was rushed to the hospital where x-rays showed 8 fractures on his cheekbone, which required a 9-hour operation. However, this story has a happy ending because Sage Northcutt returned after a 4-year hiatus and won a submission in just 40 seconds at the One Fight Night event. We know most of you are here to enjoy Israel Adesanya getting knocked out. It wouldn't be right of us to deny you that pleasure. And so here it is. Realistically speaking, the last stylebender was a sensation both in the kickboxing ring and cage. He had an active and dominant reign in the UFC where he came back even after defeat to take revenge on his nemesis and become champion once again. As a kickboxer, he achieved 75 wins and only 5 losses, being knocked out only once, and we all know who was the man on the other side of the ring that night. The second fight between Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya ended fatally for the Nigerian-Australian Chinese fighter. This was also the last kickboxing match in his career. Everything was going well for Israel until Poatan's left hand put his lights out in the 3rd round. As Kenny Florian said, Alex's left is cultivated by the devil himself. But did you know that Alex Pereira also felt the taste of defeat by a knockout back in his kickboxing days? 2016 in China, Pereira was scheduled to fight a dangerous kickboxer from Ukraine, Artur Kyshenko, on Kunlun Fight 48. Poatan was the one who applied pressure from the beginning, with Artur providing good resistance, showing durability and the ability to turn the fire in the other direction. In the first, he had problems due to Alex's 7-inch reach advantage. He even reached a few left hooks but stayed on his feet. Entering the 2nd round, Artur made adjustments, began to shorten the distance better, and survived Pereira's dangerous attacks. He finally found a hole in the Brazilian's defense, hitting him with his weapon, a left hook. Then he sent him through the ropes for the first count, and finished him with a merciless siege of blows to end the fight. Because Alex Pereira is also a man of flesh and blood.
比赛啊，美丽死神不好打，确实不好打。其实对手有反应了，对，连续打，选手有了，继续上钩，连续的，啊，裁判终止了比赛。
Former UFC champion Jiri Prochazka has mostly been the one to deliver beatings and concussions to his opponents in and out of the UFC. The man is 31 and has 30 wins and 29 finishes, which is more than impressive. However, there were days when Samurai was on the other side of the beating. 2015 in the finals of the Rizin World Grand Prix tournament, Jiri fought against Muhammed Lawal. Prochazka opened the fight in his awkward but usual martial spirit and movements. King Mo, who comes from a wrestling background, found his success when he took down Jiri and kept him on the ground for some time. However, the Czech got up and continued his antics on his feet, giving Lawal no space. But his persistence quickly turned into his downfall after consistently moving forward. He walked right into a right hand from Muhammed that spilled him face first on the floor.
To these shots a little bit now. He's not really lowering his There's a huge right, and it's over. Prochazka lurched forward and paid off.
Let's be real. Francis Ngannou is the last person we thought would ever get brutally knocked out, especially since he's mostly been the one to put the lights out. However, this has not yet happened in the cage, but it did in the boxing ring. 5 months after a masterclass performance against Tyson Fury, Francis returned to the ring against Anthony Joshua, whom he was supposed to make easy work of. However, Francis's lack of experience and poor transfer of MMA style to boxing cost him the victory in a brutal way. Joshua set the pace, and Francis struggled with stance switching, unable to punch from counter guard. Anthony took some time to scan his opponent's defense with numerous feints. When the computer in AJ's head was done calculating, he noticed loose defense in the front hand and shot there. After 2 knockdowns early in the fight, Anthony was precise with the finishing blow, taking easy money and exposing Francis's boxing performance. And as always, we leave the sweetest for last with martial arts veterans Wanderlei Silva and Mirko Filipovich. The second bout between the two things in the hands of the judges. After destroying Wanderlei's face, he served up his left high kick,